Diana. Thank you for coming into the show. We are really excited to have you in the show tonight. I have so many questions for you. I've read your books. I've, watched your webinars. I have used your work, and it's an amazing day to be able to talk to you in person.
Nice.
And you're real. Thanks for having that chat with me in the beginning. And for the audience, just to kind of give you a little bit of idea, whenever it comes to retrospectives and team liftoff, Diana is somebody who actually wrote a book on it, and not only wrote on any book, she actually wrote the book on retrospective, and people all around the world have actually used that book to improve their retrospectives and also help improve agility in their teams and their companies. So I am really excited about having this conversation with you, Diana. Let's just jump into it, Diana. Would love to hear, what have you been up to these days?
Well, these days I'm mostly working with the Agile Fluency Project. We talked about that a little bit, and helping to take people who have been Scrum Masters for a while and have become Agile coaches and been Agile coaches for a while and kind of want to move into Agile consulting. We work with them at the Agile Fluency Project to make sure they have everything that they need to do that. So I've been working from home, very focused on doing that, doing a lot of speaking at meetup groups and some podcasts, and just trying to stay connected with the community. It's a challenge these days, and but it's a good challenge. And it's fun to show up at what used to be local meetup groups and discover that, the local people are there, but then there's people from all over the world showing up, because you can go to any meetup group anywhere if you're willing to stay up late enough, I guess.
I know. You work with a big group in Europe and with Agile Fluency projects. So you're probably running workshop around the clock, or connecting with people. So that's amazing. Diana, so today's we're gonna my intention is, we talked about retrospective, we talked a little bit about the book, we talk about the team liftoff, and we can talk a little bit about agility. So let's start with the retrospectives. Diana, I'm just really curious, like, why did you write the book? What was the process of writing the book? If you can share that.
Right. Well, the reasons for writing the book are really just as strong today as they were in 2004 when we started writing it, and 2006 when it was published. And that is that people don't really understand the power of bringing together a collaborative team, and how to help them or how to create a context where they can become really strong and really high performing. And in order to do that, what you need to do is create an environment where team members can come together and continuously learn about their product, continuously learn about their and how it's affecting their customers, continually learning about customer needs, continually learning about how they're working together, their teamwork dynamics, continually learn about their process, their tools, everything, right? And because as they continually learn about it, once you learn about a thing, you can never go back and be the people who don't know that thing. So then that feeds continuous improvement, right? Once we've learned something and we've learned that we can make it better, then we want to make the improvements happen.
Wow.
But it's not just simple like that.
Yes.
It takes some attention and effort to make sure that teams have that opportunity, have the little bit of structure that they need to help them do that learning together and do that continuous improvement on a regular basis, so they can make small incremental progress and then occasionally make big leaps.
Absolutely.
But usually teams have to build up to the big leaps. They need to watch themselves make the small incremental progress and get confidence that they can learn their way through and improve their way through anything that gets thrown at them.
Yeah.
And so that's why we think it's really important. And what we were seeing was that when folks were looking at the 12th principle of the Agile Manifesto, which is at regular intervals, the team pauses to reflect, tune, and adjust, that people didn't really know how to do that.
Right.
And what a lot of people were doing was what a lot of people are doing now, which is making two lists. What did we do well? What do we think we should do differently?
Yeah.
And then maybe adding in something about appreciations, which I'm really happy about. But then walking away from the meeting and never really taking that next step into, well, if there are things we're doing well, how do we protect those things? How do we ensure we keep doing those things well? We can't take that for granted. And if there are things that we wish we had done differently or that really got in our way, what's something we can do about that? We, as a self-organizing team, as a collaborative team, we have direct control over some of those things. And
some of those things,
not everything, but that's a different exercise. We call that circles and soup. But
two things that came up that you said very powerful, like setting, first of all, we're talking from the stance of, sometimes, most of the time as a facilitator, as a scrum master or a agile servant leader, right? And then you said something about, setting the context, because people need context for like doing all these things because they have not done it before. So, and I know the book does a great job of like explaining that. So that's great. Another thing I wanted to kind of have you kind of talk about is, this is retrospectives, right? This is team of adults coming together and talking about their work, and it can be very emotional. I mean, I've heard, I've seen people like just be very angry, and it's a very interesting event, and I think it's a really it's an event very important for Scrum Master for their growth and how they can soar as a facilitator, and also for the team, like you said. So I mean, the book is there. It talks about everything, but if you were to kind of give us, entice, our audience is mostly just people who are new, who kind of know about just the retro as a, what went well, what didn't go well, right? So give us a little more.
Right. So those two lists are just lists at the end of that, and they don't cause any action. And so that's part of the reason that Esther and I wrote the book. Is in the book we give a kind of a step-by-step way of putting together a retrospective meeting that is much more likely to lead to the kind of better results, outcomes that we're looking for. And it's the core of it is replicates things that a lot of people know about and do in terms of how we get to improvements. But we also need to help these folks come together, and then we need to help them move on to whatever comes next in their work lives, which is a lot of times a planning meeting or a sprint review or something like that. And so what we put together was we call the five-step framework. And it starts with bringing people together. Well, it starts actually before then, because it starts with designing this meeting, but the meeting that we are going to design brings people together in what we call set the stage. And this is a very short part of the meeting, but it's the part where we say, here's what we're coming together to talk about. And in general, it works best if the Scrum Master checks in with team members or something and picks one thing to focus on. So, we've been having trouble connecting with our product owner. How can we do better at connecting with our product owner? We don't want it to be too specific, but we don't want it to be so general as like, what can we do to continuously improve? Because that just paralyzes people.
Right.
It's too broad, right?
Yeah.
So you want to pick an area. How do we deal with our connection to some kinds of stakeholders? How's our tooling working for us? How is our work process going? Are we having the right meetings at the right time? How's our task board working for us? Those kinds of things. Now that we're in a remote world, do we have the right communication tools to be able to do what we need? Are we getting the right information flows to be able to build the things we need to build? How do we know that we're building the right product? And how do we know that we're building it well and right?
Yeah.
All of those are potentially focus questions for in the book. It's one thing we wish we could change in the book, and we probably will if we ever write a second edition, is we called it a goal for the retrospective. It's not really a goal for the retrospective, because that sounds like you're predicting the outcome. It's really a focus for your retrospective. What is this retrospective going to be thinking about?
Absolutely.
And so we say that, and then we also sort of say, and here's how we're going to use your time. We show a little agenda, which basically is about the 5 things that we're going to go through. And then we do some small thing to just help people let go of what they've been working on and focus in the meeting. So we might do a 1-word check-in.
Yeah, Diana, I have a quick question around
those kinds of things. Yeah.
A quick question for your before. So like, that whatever you call it, the goal, right? So like
focus, yeah.
The focus, right? Is it the Scrum Master observing the entire sprint, sprint by sprint, or is it the team coming? Who's kind of?
Well, that's part of it. It's like, so what is the time? What is the work chunk that this retrospective is focusing on? Is it the sprint? Or is it our most recent release? Or is it, so that's one thing. A lot of folks who were doing ensemble or mob programming these days, they may have micro retros at the end of every Pomodoro. So it's important to understand what's sort of the time period that we're looking at. And then it can be, the Scrum Master may have made some observations. But what I encourage folks to do is check in with some team members. So, a brief conversation like, it seems like we're not getting everything we need from our product owner, or we're not working with our product owner as well as we could. Do you think that'd be a good thing to focus our next retrospective on and get some feedback from a couple of team members at least?
Okay.
Or poll the team members. What would you as a team, where would you like us to focus our next retrospective? Are you more interested in talking about how we deal with stakeholders? Or are you more interested in talking about the feedback we're getting on product quality? Those kinds of things.
I love that.
Yeah. So you can do it, I would do it in a mix. Sometimes a Scrum Master, because they're not inside the work, they can step out and get a kind of a broader view and see patterns that developers aren't seeing because they're really rightly focused in the work. And sometimes it's good to check it because developers have ideas too, right? Absolutely. And so and testers and whoever's on our team. So check in with those folks as well and say, what would you like to focus our next retrospective on? I've known some teams where they've just gone round robin. Each team member in turn got to pick what would be the focus for the next retrospective. So there's a lot of ways to pick that. And if I were Scrum Master, I think I'd do it mostly in the way that was most comfortable for me, and sometimes stretch into a different way, because of course that's how we grow.
Absolutely. So Diana, let's talk about that small check-in. So you said 1-word check-in is sometimes, do you sometimes do a little bit longer check-in, like a weather check-in, or how do you?
It depends on the group, and it depends on what the team likes. But we don't want to spend a lot of time on this because we want to get into the real work of the retrospective. But it's it serves a couple of purposes. One, you want something that's going to get everybody speaking up right at the beginning. So it has to be easy. It can't be a high stakes question, right?
Right. Okay.
Great
insight.
Yeah. So in the book, there are a whole bunch of examples of this, but one thing would be to say what we call a one-word check-in. And so you pick a topic. So if our last sprint, if you were doing a weather report on our last sprint, what kind of weather do you think we would be? Was it sunny? Was it windy? Was it was it a tornado? You know, what was going on, right?
Yes.
And then if you do that, then at the end, when you're closing the retrospective, you can say, okay, now what's our weather forecast for the next sprint?
I love the forecast.
And so it's kind of fun to find some of those bookend short things. But then there are other ways of you can say you know, if our last sprint were a vehicle, what kind of vehicle would it be? Would we be a skateboard, or would we be a bicycle, or would be? But getting everybody to say something, right?
Yeah.
And of course, you can use your other tools like online whiteboards and those kinds of things to kind of capture the responses. I often set up a little grid where I've got the people's names and then their weather report, and then a space then at the end where we could put in their weather forecast.
And I love the weather forecast.
We just fill that in, on Miro or something. So so those kinds of things, or just a check-in. The core protocols have something called mad, sad, glad, afraid. When you think about, or proud and sorry is another good one. When you think of our last sprint, are you more proud or more sorry? And you don't have to say any more than that. Just I feel proud, I feel sorry, and then you have a sense of where everybody on the team is, and they've also spoken up right at the beginning. So you're looking for something like that. There's a lot of examples in the book, and if you go to Retrium, which is an online tool that some companies have purchased and can buy, or then there's another tool. There's another thing called retromat.org, but and it's really great, but it might be for more experienced folks. There's a lot of list of different kinds of activities there as well.
I've used both.
Lots of things online.
Definitely.
So those find good ideas. Find something that feels fun to you, that's fun to facilitate, because if you're the person who's in the role of facilitating, this has to be fun for you too, because you've got to keep your energy up throughout the meeting.
And one thing you might have that there, but let's say we just did a small workshop on psychological safety, this is where could you do something? I mean, mad, sad, glad could be a check-in for ensuring people are feeling safe, right? Do you have any other ideas on how you can set the stage in terms of making that environment safe for people?
Well, actually setting the stage helps to make that environment feel safe for people. You might also mention, a lot of folks mention the retrospective prime directive.
Yes.
As part of setting the stage. No matter what we discuss in this retrospective, we understand that everybody on the team was showing up every day to do their best. And sometimes something gets in the way of that. And they're doing their best, but it may not be the best they'd like to be able to do, or the best we thought they could do. So what's getting in the way? Is it resources? Is it information? Is it, did they show up with a cold that day? So it's not about individual performance. It's about how do we work together to create a system where we can make sure that people's best is good enough for what the team needs. So I can come to work one day and do the very best I can, but I only got 3 hours of sleep because I've got a tiny baby, and my toddler came home from preschool with a cold, and I think I'm coming down with a cold, and and things are, and somebody's remodeling my kitchen in the background, my best that day is not going to be the same as my best on a day when I really got good sleep and I'm feeling great and everything's going well, right? Or maybe I wasn't able to do my best because I was waiting for a handoff from somebody and it just never came. And I spent a lot of time and energy trying to get that thing, but I was never able to do the job because that wasn't coming through for me. So there's a lot of reasons why, we all think about, my best, I could have done so much better on some other day, or so-and-so could have done so much better. But there's always reasons why our best, that we show up and we do our best.
Yeah.
I have never, ever met a person who said, unless they're completely disengaged, who shows up and says, I'm just gonna slack off today.
No,
right. I mean, take a mental health day if you're going to do that. Don't show up. Right.
Yeah.
So, sometimes talking about the prime directive, the retrospective prime directive at the beginning. If you do that for the first few retrospectives that you run, pretty soon you can just sort of refer to it. And let's all remember the retrospective prime directives in force, and you don't have to go through it every time.
Yeah.
And some people say, well, I don't believe that people are always doing their best. And then it's a matter of, well, for the purposes of this meeting, can you just, for this next 45 minutes or whatever it is, can you just, stick with us and pretend to believe it, right? Yes. Because the whole meeting will go better if you can.
Absolutely, 100%.
Yeah. So that's a thing. Sometimes people add into their setting the stage. There are other things as well. The best thing is to read about it and
absolutely
and get a few a few different ones in your back pocket that you can use to do that.
That's a great idea. That's what I did. I read your book, so the audience should do the same thing too. All right, let's move to second step: gathering data.
Yeah,
how do we do that?
The next step is gather data, and it is about understanding. Everybody has their own experience. Let's just say we're working on the sprint. Everyone has their own experience of how these 5 days or these 10 days went. They assume that is the same experience that everyone else had. We just naturally do that as humans.
Yeah.
It never is.
You're right.
Is.
Yes.
So gathering data is about making sure that we're all working with the same set of data.
Yes.
But we all have the collective picture of what went on during the sprint. So we might bring in like factual data, effort data, metrics data that the team has. How many stories did we say we were going to do in our sprint planning? How many did we actually complete? No judgment, just actually what happened. Did we find any hiccups in our task board? Did we have any outages? And then other maybe Charlie had a conversation with Vivek and they discussed a thing, but the rest of us didn't hear about it. So that'd be the time to share that with the whole team. So that's what you want to do in gather data. You're just trying to get the most complete picture so that everybody knows what everybody's experience was. So everybody has the whole picture. You're all working from the same set of data. And then, so I call that the learning part. We're learning about what happened, right? And then the next part is the analysis or the thinking together part. We call that generate insights.
Yeah.
So it's looking at what happened. What do we make of that? What does that tell us? How do we interpret what happened? What are the implications of what happened? We ask ourselves those kinds of questions. So, you know, how do we know now what difference might it make, the things that, right? So we want to be pretty thorough about that. And very often that's the part, that analysis part is the one that people who've been through engineering training or want to jump to right away. They want to start analyzing, but you can't really effectively analyze if you aren't all working from the same data yet. So you have to slow people down, make sure you have that data picture. Then you can do a really good, thorough analysis. Yeah. And then once you've got those, gleaned all the understanding you can from that, then you move on to what we call deciding what to do. So given this data and this set of implications and insights that we've discovered, what does that tell us about where we could most effectively do some improvements? So we're learning together, we're thinking and analyzing together, and then we're deciding together. This has to be a team decision about what action we're going to take. Yeah. And so then we look for we look for ways that we can kind of come together as one mind and make that choice. Sam Kainer wrote a great book called Participatory Decision Making. And he talks about, and Jean Tabeka also referenced it in her book, Collaboration Explained. It's like setting the stage and gathering data is where we find out what all the different viewpoints are. And then when we get to that generate insights, it's what he calls the groan zone. It's like, this is where we kind of work everything out. We have differences of opinion and so on. And then deciding what to do is the convergence, where we come back together to make a decision about what we're going to do next. And meetings need to follow that divergence and convergence. If they're action meetings. And frankly, if there isn't any action coming out of this meeting, if you haven't picked some place that you want to improve or something you want to something that's working well that you want to make sure you preserve, or if it's not that coming out of this meeting, it's not a retrospective. It might be a feedback session, but if there's not collective group action coming out, it's not a retrospective. And people use the term, let's do a retro on a lot of different stuff that really aren't retrospectives at all. They're feedback sessions, and feedback sessions are useful and important, but they're not retrospectives. So it's important to kind of keep that, like feedback at the end of a workshop. Well, the participants give the facilitator feedback so that they can improve, but the participants aren't going to do anything, right? That's right. Right. They're just walking away and going to apply what they learned, we hope, but they're going to all do that individually. It's, there's no collective action there. So that's a feedback loop, but it's not a retrospective. So one thing, that's just an important distinction to make. And Diana, one thing I want to make this real to the audience by maybe giving an example. And let's say let's simulate. And I know you are a big fan of like simulating things and bringing things close to them. So I'm thinking, I just came out of retrospective, and in this meeting, I'm a product owner because we're building a product. So we set the stage. We gather data, and the data that we gathered is, how many stories were completed, and how does that fit into that MVP that we're releasing,
and we also looked at the amount of bugs that were generated.
Mm-hmm.
So that, like you said, different people have different opinions. Some people are like,
Right.
oh yeah, it's going really well. I was like, oh no, this is buggy.
Right.
And then for in terms of generating insights, I think what we talked about is like, okay, why are these bugs being created? What's the root cause of it? We kind of talked about that discussion. Mm-hmm. And I don't know if anything else we could have done to like really generate that generate insights. What are some other techniques that you would have recommended?
Well, we live in a complex world, and so when we wrote the Retrospectives book, we pulled a lot of tools actually out of Lean and Toyota production, the total quality movement tools, and things like that. And there was a lot of focus there on finding the root cause. Mm-hmm. But since then, a lot of folks, me included, Esther included, have been much more immersed in the world of complexity, the VUCA, volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous environment that we're in. And a little bit of study in that area and what does it mean to be in a complex system tells you pretty early on that there may or may not be one root cause.
You're right. Yeah. 100%.
There may not be one single thing that goes into this. So these days, but that can still be useful. I mean, there are situations that aren't as complex where it might be, why were the legs falling off our chairs? Oh, the people didn't screw the screws in. That there's a root cause there. But then there's also were we rushing them? What else was going on? So even things sometimes that look simple might not be. But the thing is that what we want to do is kind of understand what were some of the alternative paths we could have taken, what new alternative paths have opened up to us now, those kinds of things. So in your situation where you're saying, we're under pressure to produce these stories, but the pressure is causing us to not be as sensitive as we maybe could be to are we not looking out for the bugs we're creating, and is that going to cost us time later on, or is that going to cost us customer satisfaction later on? And so is it that we need, so we've got a couple of alternatives here. Do we give more attention to the bugs and slow down on how many stories we finish, because we only have so much collective time as a team where we're going to spend our effort? So that's a possibility. Or do we want to create some kind of hierarchy? Are there, tier 1 bugs, which we cannot let these go out, but maybe there's some other ones that are just fiddly things that aren't going to, are in the feature that we think the fewest customers are going to use, or, there might be all kinds of reasons. But having that conversation with the product owner in the room is a really good idea.
Yes.
Right. So that they are part of the conversation.
Yeah.
And so, I would look for some activities that would sort of help me unpack what really, maybe we're creating a lot of bugs, but maybe there are a lot of bugs that don't really matter.
Yeah.
Or
True.
maybe they're really big bugs that are going to matter, that are going to make a lot of dissatisfaction for our customers and cause us problems in the marketplace, or cause our internal accounting system to crash. Which of these are going to be we really need to pay attention to, and which ones do we not? And then begin to look at the trade-offs and balances between what time does it take to fix those, and what does that mean about what we can expect in terms of how many stories we're producing. But every time, what we know is every time we produce a story that has no bugs and that has no initial, I mean, it may develop technical debt later, but initially there's no technical debt to it, right?
Yeah.
Every time we produce a story like that, we know it's a time saver. Right. There's not going to be any hot fixes that are coming back to us. There's not going to be, any blowback for us.
Yes.
So maybe it's worth the time to be more careful about the stories that we do and not try to shove so many through at a time and so on. So, but having that's a very rich kind of conversation to have. And if you've got some kind of activity, group activity that helps to structure that conversation, that can be really useful, because sometimes it's hard for people to just start from a blank page.
Yeah.
And so then after you've had that conversation, then you can come up with a list of ideas. Well, what do we think we could do to improve this situation? And we may not be able to take care of the whole thing, but what are the pieces and parts that we think are going to be most important to take care
Diana,
of?
I need a moment. You threw a lot of wisdom at me here. Yeah. Like I am partially mind blown. So let me take a moment. That was actually really, really insightful. So you actually wrote the book and you have thought about this a lot. So
yes.
Thank you. One thing I had a big aha is when you share, like, there's just not one root cause. I mean, that's so true. I didn't actually think, and because I teach 5 whys and that I come, I teach lean, right? So that was such a big aha. So I need a moment to just let that sink in. So that was really beautiful. Thank you for making that real for everybody else as much as it's for me, because that's the situation that I was in. So that was a good coaching moment, Diana.
Well, 5 whys can still be useful, but you're not coming down here, you're going this way. You're like all the contributing factors.
Yes. Yes. So once you understand things like that, once you create a space, once you have that insight generating session, you collect that from the team, and you're including your whole team. They are producing ideas. They have different insights than you. Now you're saying, hey, everybody's on the same page. There's a shared understanding. And then now the next step is deciding what to do. So how do we do that?
Well, I turn to books like Participatory Decision Making, and there are lots of examples out there of how to get to that. One of the ones that I rely on the most and that I like the best is called EIEC. That's what it is. And anyway, I'm terrible at naming these activities, and so they don't have very good ones. But so the idea is to spend a little bit of time then at the end of that generating insights to say, well, so now what are our ideas? What kind of things could we do to improve? And we write all those down. And that's ideas. That's an I. And then comes an E, which is how much, if we were to take on one or more of these things, how much team effort would that take? And I usually just do t-shirt sizing. Is that a large, a small, a medium, extra large? How much of our team effort will that take? And so let's be clear about that.
Yeah.
And the big ones, is there any way we could slice them down? The big ideas, is there any way we could slice them down and make them smaller?
Wow.
Yeah. And so then we get a list of, well, here's our best guess about how much effort these different things will take. And then we look at that list again, given the idea and given how much effort it will take, where might we get the most improvement impact?
Ooh,
so that's another
I love that.
Right. Not what's most important, because most important gets vague. But where might we get the most improvement impact? And so then I have people dot vote on that. And depending on how many ideas, I give them some number of dots, and people dot vote where they think the most impact will come from. Where will we get the most benefit if we try this improvement?
That's a great model.
Okay, so now we've got I, and then the next one is an E again, and that is, it stands for energy or enthusiasm. And what do we really want to do?
Yes. There has to be energy behind that. Otherwise, people are not going to do it.
Exactly. It has to be energy behind it. And so even though one idea might get the most impact, if it doesn't also get the most energy, we're not going to go for that one. Right? So then I usually only give people 2 dots, or at the most 3 dots. Where if you're going to be involved in helping to improve this, where are you going to put your energy?
Ooh.
Right.
That's a nice way to do it. Yeah.
So then we look at the IE, right? The idea, the effort, the impact, and the energy. And we begin to see a pattern.
Yes.
Of what is it we want to take on. And we don't actually have to decide. It becomes clear.
It's there. Like the votes are there.
Yeah. And so then I usually just do a fist of 5, look for agreement or something like that. And then the last column is C, and that is for commitment. Who on the team is going to take the lead in making sure this improvement action happens? And then who's going to back them up?
Yes.
Because they might get sick, they might get hit by a bus. We don't know. And we don't want to leave ourselves with that risk. So we make a small sub-team of the team of the folks who are going to try to drive this forward, but everybody else also commits to supporting them in that improvement effort. And then we've got our action.
Wow.
And so then we move to closing the retrospective. And what I usually do as a facilitator is I reiterate what action we said we were going to do. If it's an in-person planning, if people are working together, I used to have them take an index card and actually write the action and take that into the planning session. So it became part of the stories that they were planning for the next sprint. But in the online world, we have to do things a little bit differently. But still, we could go right ahead. I mean, now we can absolutely just write it into the next sprint plan.
Yeah.
And that's work we're going to need to account for, because it's work that we are doing. It's like automating part of your application, right? It's work we're going to do because it's going to speed us up later on. We're not going to continue to trip over this thing.
100%.
That we're going to improve that situation, and that's work worth doing. So we do that. So just reminder, this is the action we decided on. And then I usually thank everybody for the effort that they've put in. Sometimes I will also, that's a good time to do, does anybody want to offer an appreciation to anybody else on the team for the time this time we've been together in the retrospective or during the sprint as a whole? And that the rule on that is not everybody needs to get an appreciation and not everybody needs to give one.
Yeah.
But only if you really feel moved to do it.
Non-pressurized.
So yeah. And then some feedback, not a retrospective, but some feedback to the facilitator on things that they might improve for their next retrospective, and feedback to the team for how their participation could improve in the next retrospective. And then we're done.
Yeah. Wow. That was lovely. And that is such a rich way to do it, right? There's, for new Scrum Masters who are thinking now, like, what's the big deal about retrospective? That, all these things, it requires a lot of thinking and planning. And, obviously, the first time you'll do it, probably you're not going to be able to execute on them. I'm pretty sure you had to do it practicing, right? Sure. So no, that was really nice that you articulated.
Yeah. Well, and the reason that it works is that it takes into account how we each individually think through something and take action, right?
Yeah.
But we individually can do that in a split second, right?
Yes.
When you're talking about a group, helping a group of people do that all together in concert, in synergy,
Yeah.
It takes longer, right?
Yes.
Because you've got to kind of catch up with everybody. But if I look over here and I say, oh, what's this hand sanitizer doing here? I'm setting the stage. Yeah. Oh, right. I took it out of my purse the other day. I set it here. I just hadn't put it away yet. Yes. I gather some data about it. I think, well, I'd start generating some insight. Well, would it be helpful to me to keep some sanitizer right here on my desk? I'm actually got some here.
Yeah.
Would it be helpful for me to keep this on my desk? Do I want to keep it close at hand? What are the implications, right? And then I'll say, I've got some other, it's pretty close here. No, I better go put this away in the bathroom. And then I get up and I go put it away in the bathroom.
Yes.
And then I'm done, right? Yeah. It's that same process, but it's just me doing it. So it takes no time at all, right? Yeah. If we can help a whole group of people work through that process together, they're going to be much more satisfied with the actions that they take and the outcomes of those actions. And, you can even do it with an organization, but that takes a lot longer because you're trying to get all those minds working through that process together. Yeah. And bigger teams are going to take more time. So people always ask me, how long should we plan for a retrospective? And, and there's so many variables, how long a period of time are we looking at? How many people are on the team? Was there any big conflict or controversy that happened, or any other big events that happened during the course of the iteration that we're going to need to take some time to deal with? Yeah. So all of we call those the complexity factors or the complicating factors of a retrospective, and they all go into how long you need to plan for it. But if you've got a team of 7 to 9 people, and it's pretty plain vanilla sprint, nothing huge happened.
Nobody threw a Sharpie at each other.
Yeah, so well, we ran into just kind of our normal. That came up. We wish we could have built more stories, but we always wish that, right?
Yeah.
That in general takes about 75 to 90 minutes for people to get to really substantive improvement outcomes. Now, if you've got 3 people, maybe you can do it in 45, and you're looking at a 1 or 2 week sprint. If you've got 20 people, then you may be looking at a couple hours or half a day even. So, it really does depend. And then, of course, like if there's conflict or something, a big conflict, more conflict than usual. Teams have little conflicts all the time, and that's fine. That's expected. We expect to get better at doing that. And actually, that might be a focus for a retrospective. How do we get better at dealing with our conflicts as they come up?
Yes, absolutely.
But those kinds of things, they all go into how long do I plan for this? And the idea is that every minute you spend in that retrospective with all the team members, every minute costs money. So we want to have the very best outcomes that are going to help us save money in the future, right?
Absolutely.
That are going to either accelerate us or reduce the amount of effort we have to put in one thing so we can put it somewhere else. Whatever that might be, we want to create a good return on the investment of being in that retrospective. And that's why I get so frustrated.
Yes.
People approach a retrospective as if it was just, well, we're going to have to spend a half hour here and I'm going to check the box and we're going to move on.
Yes.
Because that's a wasted half hour. You're not getting any longer term benefit out of that half hour. And so you may as well not do it.
Yeah, right. That is great. Yeah. Why just pretend? Yeah, just
why do
cancel it?
Yeah. If you're not getting benefit from your retrospectives, there's no point in doing them. But I would encourage folks, if they're not getting benefit from their retrospectives, to examine how they're doing their retrospectives first before they chuck them.
Absolutely.
I mean, every time somebody comes to me and says, my team says they don't want to do retrospectives anymore, my response is, that's a great focus for your next retrospective.
Yes.
Why are we not getting value out of our retrospectives?
Oh, beautiful. Right? I love it. Diana, that was a beautiful conversation, and you created so many ahas, even for me. And I've been doing retrospectives for a while, so I think the audience, who are learning Agile, learning, being in Scrum teams and facilitating, I'm sure they're gonna get a lot of value. We had so many amazing topics around learning that we had initially planned for, but the conversation went really deep, and I mean
we might need to do 5 rules of learning another time.
Yes.
That would be another good one for Scrum Masters to know about and do. But yeah, this is basic. This is fundamental to having an Agile team. Yes. And so we need to do retrospectives well. Goes right back to the manifesto and the 12th principle. So,
absolutely. So like the return of time investment for me was like, amazing. Personally, for me, I am taking some action items and some things that I'm gonna think about. Okay, Diana hit me with those points. Like now I need to like uncover it. Let me go. It's been a while. I've read that book. I'm gonna actually go back to that book again. But I really appreciate this conversation, Diana. This was fun, and thank you so much.
Thank you, Vivek, for inviting me.
Please like and subscribe if you enjoyed this video. We'll be sure to come back with more exciting videos on Agile topics.